The third and final veto session day this week was yesterday. The House was off. The Senate was in session. They didn't do much. We'll actually touch on what happened with the veto session. But one thing they didn't do this week was they did not advance that order of protection bill that would say police are required to confiscate firearms from subjects who are facing a domestic violence order of protection. If you're not familiar with that whole process, consider yourself blessed, right? I mean, you don't have to go through it. But those who have learn quickly that an order of protection could lead to a suspension of their rights. Now, this is a question that's being taken up by the U.S. Supreme Court, especially when it comes to Second Amendment rights, because a lot of times the preliminary order of protection, it's not a jury by trial. It's merely an initial type of step that might be considered based on exigent circumstances, things in the now that you need to act quickly because somebody says that they're being threatened. And that, of course, is done in a court, and a court can order an OP. Again, this is just my general understanding. I am not an attorney. But you've got the OP being issued, and in Illinois, if somebody has an OP against them, an order of protection, they can transfer their firearms to a third party. And then tell police that, disposition of firearms record, here you go. This is with a third party. And that's how the law is right now. But there are efforts at the statehouse to try to change that to require police to confiscate those firearms. Some question the due process of it. Others question just the overall protocol and where things are going to be stored if law enforcement has to take a large number of firearms from somebody who faces an order of protection. So there's some substantial questions there, but I did talk with State Representative Maura Hirschauer, Democrat from Batavia, earlier this week, and she's one of the proponents of this measure to bring about an order of protection bill that requires police to confiscate those firearms if an order of protection is ordered by a court. And here's what Representative Hirschauer had to say.
The bill is a really important piece of public safety legislation that will focus on a dangerous point in time where petitioners are worried for their safety and law enforcement and judges need clarity to go in there and issue a warrant to get guns out of the hands of dangerous people. We're working through this every single day. Conversations are ongoing with law enforcement and with the community. So I'm hopeful that we can get something done. We have a busy veto session, and I anticipate that the final week of veto will be incredibly jam-packed, but we are still moving forward with conversations because it's such an important piece of legislation.
So again, it's possible that it could still come up in the final 3 days of fall veto session, but there's opposition to the current proposal. I talked with Jim Kychek. He's the executive director of the Illinois Sheriff's Association, and he shared some of his initial thoughts and concerns about what this bill ultimately could do and the pressures it puts on law enforcement, in particular, sheriffs.
Well, honestly, Greg, I've not heard from the sponsor of the bill since the end of the spring session. And that was when the House passed it over to the Senate and added some additional provisions onto the bill that would have required law enforcement to report back to the courts within 48 hours after the judge issued the order to report back whether or not we were successful in serving it, and also whether or not, how many times we tried and what methods we used. And I guess, I think one of the things that is about this entire issue, I don't want law enforcement to be painted as though we don't care about domestic violence, because we're the ones out there directly protecting these folks, and we're intervening in domestic violence situations all the time. So we care very deeply about this issue. And I want to make sure that, we're just making sure as a part of this process that what we're doing is giving due process to all those people involved. If somebody has an order of protection against them and they've threatened violence with a gun, should we be able to take the gun? We probably should, but there are proper and appropriate mechanisms through the court by which we need to do that. And, as a law enforcement officer, if I want to get a search warrant, I have to swear out a statement. I have to go through the state's attorney and to a judge to be able to make sure that I have enough probable cause and rationale as to why I need to get that. Under the proposal that I've heard about here is that an individual, so an ex parte situation, the person that would be the petitioner for the order of protection, that they would actually be able to swear out a search warrant that I then, as law enforcement, have to go serve. I don't have the particulars. If I'm not the officer that knows the particulars of the house or the information that I've got, that puts a lot of people at risk. And that's some of the concerns about this. You know, we're here to protect the public and protect good people. That's what we want to do. It doesn't matter, you know, who you are, what you are. We're here to protect you. And so we want to make sure that we're doing that and that we're protecting your constitutional rights as we're doing so.
So again, Jim Kychek, he's the executive director of the Illinois Sheriff's Association, sharing some of his thoughts about this and how it could lead to some dangerous situations. Because as it is right now, you can give your firearms to a third party and give police a disposition record, and then you can let the process play out, and then you can get your firearms back. But there's questions about the FOID card that would be suspended. That's another conversation for another day. But ultimately, you have this bill that could come up before the end of the year dealing with requiring police to confiscate those firearms in certain cases. What would police do with that? What would sheriff's deputies do with those firearms? And how frequent would they have to deal with this question? Again, Kychek responding to some of those questions.
Well, and unfortunately, I think a lot of this is going to fall back on the sheriffs because they have a responsibility to serve orders from the court. Local PDs do not. But in terms of your specific question, it's a huge impact. Under current law, if somebody is issued an emergency order of protection, we go out and we tell that person, we serve that individual. We also, ask for their FOID card at that point in time. We find out, if they have guns that they need to be transferred. If they provide us a firearms disposition record that they transfer them to another individual that is a valid FOID card holder, we do not have to seize the weapons. So the issue here is that under this scenario, we would then be taking all of these weapons. And in some cases, there are a lot of emergency orders of protections that are issued. The challenge at the end of that is that not all of those, your FOID card is suspended at that point in time. But during after that 2-week period is over, if that emergency OP does not turn into a plenary, so a more permanent, which would be up to 2 years, then that means that the person could get their guns back. The challenge there, though, is that they don't immediately get their FOID card back. So there's a time lag there. As you well know, there are a lot of folks that have a lot of high-end weapons that are very expensive. They could be collector's items. And certainly we don't want to have the responsibility for, damage or anything occurring to those weapons. And like you said, the space alone, most local PDs and sheriff's offices, we just don't have the space to be able to hold this.
And that is Jim Kychek. He is the executive director of the Illinois Sheriff's Association. Conversation I had with him yesterday. Actually, it was earlier this week. Getting my days all blended together because, of course, we had fall veto session this week, but the House canceled Thursday. The Senate was in, but they did not take up any kind of measure to require police confiscate firearms in instances where there's an order of protection. And sometimes these are considered also, the same kind of caveat of laws of red flag laws, right? And that's coming more into focus as well, especially with that mass shooting suspect in Maine, apparently still on the loose as of, Friday morning, just before 8 o'clock Central Time. So we'll see if we can get an update there. But Governor J.B. Pritzker talking about just the overall need for more similar types of gun control. Here he is yesterday at an unrelated event being asked about the situation in Maine.
We have, you have to have somebody who's willing to report. You have to have somebody who's willing to go through that process in order to have those red flag laws go into effect. And so I would say it's probably as much a challenge for people on the ground who are experiencing this person one-on-one as it is for law enforcement.
So we'll hear a lot more about the reaction from that mass shooting story and where we're seeing a lot of the gun control side going, and even where the gun rights side is going with the way they're reacting to the unfolding situation in Maine. So regardless, we'll keep an eye on all of that for you here with Bishop on Air. Follow me, like, subscribe, notify, email me, bishoponair@gmail.com. Let me know that you're getting your patches that I sent out, a week and a half ago or so. So always good to hear back from people who got those. And we'll do some more stuff like that soon, too. So stay tuned. All right, a lot more to get to here with Bishop on Air.